is Nancy Ann. Someone asked me if I had a video of my sourdough recipe. I do not, because this is a scoring channel, but I do understand why somebody would ask that question. So I'm going to make this one video. I'm hoping it's not going to get too stupid long, to show how I do put my sourdough together. Just keep in mind, sourdough is not so much a recipe as it is a science or a practice. Everybody has to change parameters with sourdough according to your environment, your ingredients, all sorts of different factors. So what works for me may not work for you, and you may have to tweak it up. Alrighty. So I'm going to start off with 200 grams. I'm going to make 2 loaves that are about 500 grams flour each. And I go 20% on my starter. So I am starting out with 200 grams, which is 20% of 1,000 grams for the flour of, whoops, let me turn my scale on. That's always helpful. There we go. So my scale's zeroed out. It's at 0 grams. I don't know if you can see this, but I did turn that towards you in case you could. That's 117. This is starter is not freshly fed. It is out of the refrigerator. I fed it. I'm filming this on a Tuesday. I think I fed it last Thursday. Could have been, let's see, when did I score? No, I fed it last Friday. There's 168. You do not have to have freshly fed starter to make sourdough. This has been sitting in the fridge. It is hungry. It wants food. And guess what my flour is? It's starter food. So it'll be fine. It just takes a little bit longer for the bread to rise when it starts out cold, but it's not as long as it would have been if I would have fed the starter and then added it and then let it rise again. So there we go, 200 grams of my starter. This, by the way, is a whole wheat starter. I use it as a base for all of my bread. And now I'm going to put in here, I'm going to zero my scale, and I do 65% hydration. Well, because this is going to be 20% whole grain, I do 65%. If this was all bread flour, I would do 60% during the summer, because my bread gets so much looser during the summer months. I don't know, as soon as it starts getting warm, it starts getting looser. So this is going to be 650 grams. It's really hard to work with, and it's very hard to score. It spreads out when I take it out of the Banneton at 65% during the summer, or in this case, 70%. Let's put it this way. I'm sorry, I know this is confusing. When I put whole grain in there, 20% whole grain, I raise my hydration by 5%. So if this was all bread flour, it would be 60%, but because I've got whole grain, I'm raising it by 5% to 65%, or 650 grams of water. And the reason why I do water second is because if I get too much, I can pour it off easily if I just put it in there with the starter. And that's 656, so I'm going to take just a little bit out. Just use a bowl. Normally I pour this off into the sink. 642, 645. I'm part German. That's why I'm so exacting. Okay. Now I'm just going to stir that. This is the second reason why I do the starter, the water second, is because it lets me stir this in and get this starter evenly distributed. That water, by the way, is what I call baby bottle warm. I run a little bit over my wrist, and if it feels like, if I basically can't feel it, if it just feels wet and I don't feel a temperature, I know that's a good temperature for my bread. Just gonna get it mixed in there pretty good. All right, that's good enough. Now I'm going to zero my scale again, and now I'm going to come in 20% whole wheat, or 200 grams of this whole wheat flour. This, by the way, is King Arthur whole wheat flour. It is my favorite whole wheat flour to work with, and the bottom is now a little bit wet because it is just such a fine texture. It's easier to mix, and I think it turns out a better product. I meant to make this rye. Well, we're going whole wheat today. I haven't made a rye in a while. I'll need to do that next time. Whoops, 227. So I'm gonna take bring this down. This is easy to do because I just put it on the top. There we go. Oops, no, I need 20 more grams off. Yeah, it's 206. That's close enough. I don't want to mess with it anymore. And now I'm going to come in with the remaining 800 or so grams. I'm just going to bring that up to 1,000 in bread flour. This is King Arthur bread flour. Ooh, can you see? Okay, don't want to get that one wet. Normally, a lot of times I like to go with the organic, but with the price of groceries going up like they are, I just went with the regular, much less expensive. I like King Arthur quite well. It seems to do really well with my breads. I am not a sourdough recipe or build expert. I'm not an expert at anything. This is just what I found works for me. I'm still learning. I'm sure I will improve my techniques as time goes on. There we go. 1001, 1002, that's close. The German in me has to do this. I'm actually more Irish than I am German, I found out. Okay, and now, forgot my salt. I'm gonna do 25 grams of salt. I can already tell I do not have enough in this container. I like 2.5% salt. I just think it tastes better. I like salt. And nobody's ever complained about my bread, but I think it's better flavor. Alrighty, opened a new container of salt, and we're gonna put 7 more grams in here because we were at, so now it should say 1,025 when I'm done. Yep, there we go. And now, I'm gonna get rid of that scale, and I'm gonna mix it at first with the spatula that's in there, or the rubber scraper, because it's so wet. Trying to make sure that salt gets evenly mixed. Oops, out on the counter. Just get it going with this so I don't have pools of water I'm working with when I bring in my bowl scraper. And now I have my bowl scraper. These are very inexpensive. I think I got 2 of them for $8 on Amazon. It's like a wide rubber scraper with no handle. All right, and now I'm going to use this to just mix all the dry stuff in there. Okay, now that that's all incorporated, I'm actually going to get in with my hands. I'm going to do some kneading. I'm going to have to get my hand wet in a minute, probably, just to make sure everything's pretty well homogenized, as evenly mixed as possible. When I do my stretch and folds later, it will help with that too. But for right now, this is what I'm doing. Yep, need wet hands. Sticking. This kneading helps develop the gluten a little bit, but really it's the sitting here for an hour that's going to do the most gluten development, which I'm going to do next. Okay, that's probably good enough. Evenly moist. So just note when I pick this up, it just tears, because one way you know you've got good gluten development after letting it sit is that does not happen. Okay, I am going to cover this with plastic wrap that I will spray with non-stick spray on one side so that when my dough rises and bulk proof, it won't stick. And I will see you in an hour after it has had a chance to sit here and soak in that water and build a little bit of gluten development. It's been 35 minutes, but I want to get going with this, so I thought I'd check gluten development now. I'm going to take my saran that was sprayed on this side, that underside with nonstick spray off. I'm going to lift this up and see if I can get a window pane effect. Now see how that's holding together pretty good, and you can see light through it. That is a window pane effect. Before it was just tearing, now that gluten is developed. So that's good enough. I am going to get my hand a little wet. Now I'm going to do my stretch and folds. So for stretch and folds, just pick up, give a good stretch and pull it. Then I go to the opposite side. Oh, is it still tearing a little? No, it's okay. Whoops, and I forgot to do one thing I always do. Let me get my shot glass. My shot glass and my bench scraper. I'm going to cut a little bit off here. I'm going to shove it down into the shot glass. I'm going to level it out, just like this. I'm going to take a the kind of white wipe marker that you can wipe off. I'm going to try and get this level. Take a marker. I'm going to mark it at the edge there. All right, that's going to get set aside, and this is going to give me an idea of when my dough has bulk proofed enough. I want to do it here at the beginning rather than when I'm done with my stretch and folds, because the stretch and folds are done during the bulk proof. So I want to make sure I get as close to understanding when my dough is fully proofed as possible. And I generally do this from eight points, one on each side, then I hit the corners. Okay, so now I'm going to cover this up. I'm going to let it wait 30 minutes, and I will do 2 more stretch and folds 30 minutes apart. Real quick, on this sample, I'm going to put a little plastic sandwich bag to help mimic the plastic wrap that's over the dough, and it will sit right next to the dough, so it's in the same environment the whole time for the most accurate guess of when my dough is proofed enough. All right, time for our second set of stretch and folds. So I'm gonna grab the corner or a side, pull, give it a pretty good stretch. I don't want to be super rough, but I do want to make sure that the gluten has an opportunity to stretch in there. We're developing gluten. Now I'm going to go to the opposite sides, do a pull, do a pull. Ideally, you want to do this until it starts to resist you. And now I'm going to hit the corners because I want to make sure all of it gets stretched. I don't think everybody does that. I do. Makes me feel better. I'm trying not to squish bubbles, just stretch up. All right. I'll be back in 30 more minutes to do another stretch and fold. Time for the last set of stretch and folds, I think. On this last one is a chance to kind of assess the dough and how the gluten strength is doing and all that good stuff. So sometimes I'll add in another set and stretch and folds depending on how things are going here. But see, this isn't coming up as far as it used to. So that's telling me that it is probably, yeah, the gluten's getting good and developed. And I think I can just do this from 4 points instead of 8. I'm going to go ahead and bring it in from the corners too. They're kind of stretching a little bit. All right, so that's our last set. If it was really stretchy, like I said, I'd go in for another set. I'm going to flip this upside down. I'm going to put my saran back on, and I will show you how and where I do the rest of my bulk proof. So we have a drywall repairer here. He's talking to my husband, the fighter pilot, about fighter pilot things down in the basement. But this is inside the microwave. This is where I keep my dough. It's nice and warm in here and a consistent temperature from the light that it's emitting to the stove top. I put the sample in there too with the little line facing out so that I can easily see when it's doubled. It could very well be in here anywhere from 6 to 8, sometimes even 10 hours. What else? It just keeps it nice and consistent. If we need the microwave, we just take it out, we set it on the stovetop, we microwave, we put it back in. And the advantage to that is that warms it up even more. So there's that. We've never microwaved the dough, by the way. That's never happened. Because you have to open the microwave to put things in it. People see the dough and then they take it out. Alrighty, we'll be back when the dough is fully proofed. We went to a movie. We came back. It is about 7.5 hours later, and I found my sample jar right here. So there's my little mark. And it has, as you can see, roughly doubled. Not quite really, but, you know, to the peak, just about. So, and then my dough has definitely puffed way up. So I'm going to do some shaping. Take my saran off. I'm actually going to hang on to that because that's going to cover one of my Bannetons. And I'm going to turn this upside down. There is a chance, this is very warm, that this is overproofed, but I would rather err on the side of overproofing than underproofing, because underproofing can make those big fat holes inside the loaf, which isn't very good, and it can be a little bit gummy for, you know, for cutting and eating. But also overproofing is less likely to blow my design out. So I just take that into consideration because this is going to be 2 loaves. I'm dividing this in half with my bench scraper. I am going to just set this aside for the moment. This is a clean counter. I'm going to do some shaping. A little bit, my rough shaping. This is a boule and batard. I don't do a lot of that foldy over stuff. I kind of let the shape of the dough tell me what it wants to do. And I am squeezing out bubbles as I go, because that can wind up being big bubbles inside. Yeah, this feels really warm. I'm going to bring the ends down. I'm going to do a little bit of messing with it, going around. Oh, let me get out here where you can see me. I got that out further than I thought I did. Sorry about that. You can see the next one for sure. Squeeze a little bubble out there. Just get a little tension on the outside of the loaf. Then I'm going to set it aside. And I'll bring the other loaf over here, or the other thing of dough over here. There we go. I have my camera at a different angle than I did before. This one looks like it's going to cooperate, go out in a square, but I don't want to completely flatten it. I want to keep some of that air. Now, when I fold this over, I'm being careful not to create an air pocket in the middle. Sometimes you'll see these loaves of bread that have a big air pocket in that middle, and that generally comes because they flop it down when they're shaping. So this, I want to try and make sure I get it nice and tight. Going over, bring it here. I'm going to tuck an end. Oops. I'm going to tuck an end. All tucked, and now I'm going to do some of that around. This is the bigger loaf, so I'll make this the Banneton. Or sorry, I'll make this the batard, because it has a bigger volume than my boule Banneton does. And there, see that big bubble? I'm just going to get that out. Not super problematic, but it can make a little bit of a problem with scoring sometimes. Mess up a design. That's a huge one. That goes all the way across the top. Okay, and you don't want to take all the air holes out because you want, you know, good oven spring. All right, I'm going to move this one out of the way, bring this one over here. It had just a little bit of time to do some resting. So for some gluten development, sometimes you can let it rest just a minute or two. Some people let them rest like half an hour. I don't do that. This is going to be my boule, so I want it in a round shape. I'm just scooping it, bringing it around. You'll notice my counter is not floured. I want to use the resistance on the counter to help me get that tight on the loaf. Okay, there is a big bubble right there, but I'm going to kind of let that sit because this is nice and smooth and I don't want to mess with that. Turn it over. This is a smaller Banneton. I like to put put my boules in the smallest one I can. It's not going to rise much in the fridge anyway. And this way it gets me some nice vertical development, which looks really good with scoring. All right, just a little bit. This is kind of like stitching. I'm just making sure it's all coming together, and just a little more opportunity for some gluten development. Okay, on this one, I'm going to use a bowl. Let me grab my bowl. I'm going to put this over top. I'm going to set it aside, and I'm going to shape my batard. So mess with it just a little bit. I think it wants to go this way. Squeeze out that big obvious bubble. Hoping to tuck that seam underneath. Turn it over, push, turn it over, push. I think a lot of people just push from the same side, but I turn it. There we go. Dog's coming up the stairs. Okay, and one more. Take it like that, turn it over. I'm going to set it down in my bigger batard shaped Banneton, and now I'm going to do a little stitching because it still feels kind of loose to me. I'm not a pro stitcher, that's for sure. Just creating some more tension across the surface, which would be the underside of that loaf. I come over here, I'm going to squeeze that together. That will separate a little bit. And now I'm going to cover this back up. Now, you can put it in the fridge at this point. I am actually going to let it sit out at room temperature for another hour or so in this state, just to help it rise a little bit more. And I want to make sure, I've just learned I really need to push my, my fermentation. I really have a tendency to under ferment, so I want to make sure it is not under fermented and possibly just a little bit over. So in another hour or so, I will put this in the refrigerator, both of these, and I will put my my sample in my not my discard jar, actually in with my starter. And this could make a new start on a loaf, but I'll just put it into my starter and it'll be mixed in and be good to help out with the next feeding. And these, by the way, are going to go in the refrigerator overnight, and then I will score and bake them in the morning. See you for that. This has been overnight in the refrigerator for about 14 hours. We're just going to do the batard right now because I'm going to do an easy score. I am going to use my bread sling. I have affiliate information on that down below, like I do in all my videos, if you want to check that out. And I've learned with this bread sling to do it this way so I can lift it out of the Dutch oven easier. I'm not going to do an intricate score. We're just going to do a single slash for this one. Peel my towel off, and I am going to give it a spray though, just so there's some moisture in the Dutch oven with it, which might help with an ear. I found this is plenty of moisture. If I do more moisture, if I add an ice cube or something, it tends to make it affect the ear. And now I'm just going to put my blade in there as deep as I can. One single slash. Let me check over here. I think that's good. All right. Now we're going to come over here and I'm going to get my Dutch oven out of the oven. It has been heating at 500 degrees for about an hour or so. I don't normally leave it in that long. I just wanted to make sure we were ready to film. Take that lid off. I'm going to set this down in my Dutch oven. I'm going to tuck my edges on that. I'm going to put the lid back on, and I am going to put it back in the oven. Whoops. And now I'm going to move my temperature from 500 down to 425. And I am going to bake it. I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes this time. Often with a 500-gram loaf, I do 25 minutes, but this one was bigger than the other one, so I'm going to give it an extra 5. And an extra 5 in the Dutch oven doesn't hurt anything. And we will be back with the par bake, the Dutch oven reveal. Getting our bread out of the Dutch oven here. It's been in there for 30 minutes, 425 degrees. Let's see. I'm ear challenged. Let's see how it turned out. Oh boy. Well, I had a really sharp blade. It's a little bit rougher than I'd like, but it did have really good oven spring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it on this bread sling. Normally, if I was baking this by itself, I would just put it right back in the oven with the bread sling still tucked at the sides and bake it for another 15 minutes or until it's about as brown as I want. But because I've got the other loaf I need to score and bake, I'm just going to put it over here. And it's going to wait until the other one's done, and then I will let both of them bake together, and we will see you with the final product. And the fully baked loaf. I will be the first one to admit that this is one wonky looking loaf. That ear did not rise up the way I wanted. It doesn't have the smooth belly. It is just torn all to pieces in there. I have the toughest time with ears. Anyway, let's look at the positives. There's a whole bunch of really nice blisters on the side here, and it's got great oven springs. So I will see you back when I cut it open. We'll get a look at the crumb. Here she is, our wonky loaf, ready to see some oven spring. I am curious about this. Oh, actually, that's pretty darn good. Little hole, those are from shaping. Somehow I got an air bubble in there, but I think overall we're looking pretty good. It's still a little bit warm, which it really shouldn't be when you cut into it, but I'm hungry and want a piece, so here we are. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to watch. If you found this valuable, please give the video a thumbs up. If you want to see more scoring videos, as I have time to put them up in the future, please feel welcome to subscribe and comment down below if you have any questions or any comments. Thanks so much. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.